Minutes. Jesus Christ. What the hell's that? Oh, that's too. That sounds a little too jolly, man. Okay. Let's see what we got here. How's everybody doing?
Good.
Doing well. Really good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So much has happened. So much has shifted since last time I was on the show and since we all last saw each other.
No kidding.
Same here. Huge.
Yeah, same here.
Really? So when was that? When was that? That was the 20th in Australia, right?
Saturday or Sunday?
Yeah, it was 20th in Australia, 19th in hey Jamie Williams. Yeah, that was the 19th, and let's see, what the hell?
I don't know what came first, the chicken or the egg, the energy around the 22nd or our session.
I don't know. Let me get rid of that cheesy ass.
It was all pretty potent.
Yeah, all right. So okay, let me just make sure we're live. We got 25 people in the house. Boys Club, somebody said. Boys Club.
Yeah.
So yeah, we gather here today in transparency, right? Oh, shit, let me turn this off. And we're here to talk about what happened. So I understand that I don't know who it was. I think it was Robert and Jamie told Morgan that had some major stuff going down from that session we did. Is that right?
Yeah. For me, it was not that night. It was the next night, but it was like full body aches, burning hot, just super, like this avatar body was so uncomfortable integrating all of that stuff. And it probably lasted like 8-10 hours. And then it just, like, I just sat with it. I mean, it woke me up after a couple of hours and then I was just awake all night with it. And yeah, like I just sat with it. I was like, I know what this is. It's just everything integrating. And then, yeah, that morning when I got up, it was all good. But yeah, just so much downloading and insight. And I spoke to Robert and it was almost as if like we got handed the keys to the kingdom. Like,
Yeah.
I could suddenly see everything. Like,
so just so everybody knows, because some people may not know what precipitated this. So we had a Hieroskamos group workshop on the 19th in the U.S. or the Northern Hemisphere, 20th in the Southern Hemisphere. And so in the process, we had, I think we ended up having about 100 people, but I think about 50 showed up live. And so what ended up happening was we talked about Hieroskamos, and then we decided we were going to pick a few people or actually, what was it? 2 or 3 people, and 3 people. It was 3 people that were going to merge. And so it started with me and one of you and a woman. Who was it? Jamie, and then one sister. And then so everybody said, Morgan said, check in with your higher self. And then the sister said, I'm not supposed to go in. So then I think one of the other 2 raised their hand, and if I'm not mistaken, there was another woman that actually, there was a second woman that wanted to come in when the first one, got the answer no, which wasn't a bad thing, by the way. That's not a bad thing. It was just it wasn't meant to be. So this is part of the reason we're here. And so then another woman raised her hand, and then she checked in with her higher self, and she's like, no, I'm not supposed to go in either. So then I think one of you then said, I'll do it. Who was it?
Yeah.
Was it Robert?
So it was Phillip first and then me. Yeah.
Phillip and Robert. And then one of you 2, I think it was Phillip, said, I'm getting that we're supposed to have another person in here. So then Jamie raised his hand, and so now we had 4 men out of about 6 in the whole live session. So there was 50 people. I think there was 5 or 6 men, and we ended up with 4 men in the situation where they're going to merge together. And so evidently that was meant to be. There's multiple meanings, multiple purposes to everything. So yeah, okay, you can. And so you ended up the next day, Jamie, you ended up having some physical ramifications from, you directly attribute that to the session that we had. Okay.
Yeah.
And you're talking to Robert. And what did Robert say?
He mirrored everything that I'd said.
Yeah. So I after that, the next day, it was pretty just like, I was in awe. I mean, it literally was the biggest energetic kind of, I guess, initiation or handoff I've ever experienced with the higher Scamus work. Yeah, I've done a lot of work over the years, but receiving that, it really felt like a total quantum shift into understanding the unity between all of us and the unification of our souls and what is possible with that. So there was that, as well as the energetic experience that I was having, which, it was immense during the show. And then after, I didn't feel like I fully understood it. Or not during the show, during the, the workshop thing. I didn't feel like I fully understood it. But then, yeah, it kind of started to unfold. The next morning, I also merged again with Sananda, because Sananda was the being that I merged with earlier, before we did that group merge with Sananda Yeshua. I merged with him, and so I had a lot of just downloads coming in, and I felt things coming online, and I did a ton of light language, and then all of a sudden I like popped something in my brain, and it was like my third eye. It hurt. Like, it felt very uncomfortable. It like, I was like, what? Like, did I just like F myself up? Like, I was like toning. But ever since then, like, it's just very, very open. Like, I'm going to the earth grid, the new earth grid. I'm doing things in ways that I've never done them before. As well as I've had out-of-body experiences. I mean, we'll get into that, but on 222, that was quite the immense day for me.
Yeah.
And so it just felt like merging with all of you, and you in particular, Todd. It was like you just handed me so many keys. It was just like, click, like, just turn all this stuff on. And yeah.
Good. Okay. So let's just make sure, because some people didn't know about it, or they weren't aware of it. So basically what happened was, so we, I think Morgan talked about the, the mechanics, some of the, processes and points and so on about Heros. What is Heros? What is soul merging? At that point, I think everybody, picked an essence of some sort to merge with. Like, everybody did it on their own. It could have been a partner. It could have been an incarnated person. It could have been, a divine essence or an angel or whatever they wanted to merge with. And then we ended up, fast forward, we end up into, let's do a demonstration where most everybody's observing, and that's how the 4 of us ended up, which was not planned. I mean, how are you going to get 4 men out of, when there was 5 or 6 and there's 50 total people? But and just to give people a little bit more background on the information in the workshop. So when 2 or more people merge, what they're doing is exchanging code. So we're made up of an infinite number of frequencies. Some of those frequencies, I'm in a higher alignment, some you're in a higher alignment. And the idea is that when we come together in what is oneness, which is merging the soul, at the chakras, and so on and so on, we start to have, just in an organic, other conscious type of way, the exchange of codes that we need, right? So this is kind of how it went, which is really what you're speaking to in your experience, and we can come back to that and go in a little bit deeper. But let's hear what Phillip had to say. So Jamie had the next day. I think that's right. And then Roberts was the next day that you had kind of the after effects. And what about you, Phillip?
Yeah, for me, the actual session wasn't as strong as what you guys are describing, but I was aware of all the energy going on. Yeah, and next day, my activations were, let's say normally they're an 8, they were like around a 10, and it was going on all the time. So this went on. It's only starting to taper off recently. So
and what kind of things were happening to you?
It's hard to describe. I mean, it's hard to describe to someone else, but it's more like you're accessing source. That's the only way to put it. Just like there's a wholeness, and like your whole body is buzzing.
Right.
It's probably like heroin on crack, but I've never tried heroin on crack. So that's the closest analogy I can find. And it's only an analogy and not recommended.
Yeah. I've done both, and it was nothing like what these things are. That's way back in my past, by the way. So yeah, I mean, like I know. Okay, so I'll just throw my 2 cents in. So when it happened, I immediately felt when we decided to merge, I immediately felt Phillip in my sacral. You know, now doesn't mean Phillip was in my sacral with his hands. It was just meant that he was entering, or his energy was being felt in my sacral. Jamie's was in my my higher heart and higher heart, and Robert's was in my throat chakra. And I remember that very distinctly. And so, yeah, that was the first thing I remember. Robert, or unless I'm sorry, Jamie, we'll go in circle. So can you just kind of go back through like what happened? So you had I don't know, do you want to talk about first the actual experience? I know Phillip just kind of touched on it from his perspective, but like what was your experience when the 4 of us merged?
I'll go back a little bit actually, because I was actually already feeling the session before with the session, like 24 hours before. It was almost like I knew that it was going to be huge, and I was already tapping in. And I'd actually got a whole bunch of Harris Gamos downloads, because the night before I was watching something, and then it was like, oh wow, like so much clicked for me that it's not just a sexual energy, like it's a life force energy. And then Morgan confirmed it during that session, and it was like a light bulb went off, like, wow, I've been accessing this stuff so long, and now it's starting to make sense. And then go back to the session when we merged, it was just like I went deeper than I ever had before, and like that soulgasm or whatever you'd call it was even more intense than I'd experienced before. And I'd really been struggling, energetic blockages and stuff prior, like a few months prior, but that everything was just so flowing. And when we all merged, I could actually feel the cells in my entire avatar body it was like they were sparking, like it was like all of these little cells were turning on all of a sudden. And just I felt like I just got ripped open from the inside out. It's probably the most English terminology that I could use, because yeah, like words really don't do it justice.
Yeah.
And so the next feel everything shifting, like in my head, in my body, just everything super across the board.
Wow. And so the next day you have these physical consequences that you're associating with what happened. And can you just run through that again?
It was basically, it was the same feeling that I had during the session, like everything was sparking, and it was like everything was turning on. And in that process, like I was generating so much heat, I was burning up, and just the aches of everything integrating into the cells of this avatar body was just Like, I mean, I thought about it because I was very conscious of what was happening and why it was happening. And I thought, if people weren't aware and they were experiencing this, like if I went and just did a merging like that with people that weren't aware and ready for that level, like they would probably go to hospital because it was that crazy.
Wow.
And I mean, like I've had light language in my head before and it gets to my throat and then it gets stuck. But yeah, I think between Todd and Robert, like it just comes out.
Wow. Robert.
And
go
just
ahead.
and it's like I can see everything. I'm having like, I mean, it was happening prior, but I'm having conversations I've had before. Like during a conversation, I'll start telling them what they're about to say, and yeah, and as we go on later in the chat, I'll talk about more since. But yeah, it's been a wild ride.
Okay, we'll pick up with that when we come back to you. That sounds pretty interesting. Sita Devi just said, "Wow, new understanding of turning someone on." So this is fertile territory. Robert.
Yeah.
So yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah. So yeah, piggybacking off what he said. Actually, I did have kind of a preparation happening before this experience, and it was a combination of things. After the last show I went on, I kind of experienced a lot of initiations, a lot of stuff shift within me. But then, really, the day before that session, it was just epic amounts of light language and toning. I mean, I drive for Uber Eats and DoorDash, which is awesome because I get to freestyle rap and do light language while I drive and
Hey,
work.
you need to start making some of those YouTube videos like they do some of those Uber drivers.
Exactly. Yeah. No, I've thought about it, but yeah. So yeah, while I was doing that, it was just constant, nonstop, and it really got into the tone zone, very high pitch. I mean, a whole vocal range of tones,
Yeah.
activating all kinds of things in me. And then we went into that session, had those experiences, and during that, and this is interesting because the pineal gland has really been activating from that. But during that, there was a lot going on with my pineal, in the sense of me seeing angels. And I mean, that was a thing that had been happening the week before, like seeing my wings, seeing, all sorts of things about who I am start to open up. But I was seeing each of us like that. I was seeing our light bodies. I saw, just images of a very big full out wingspan, one of us holding a sword, kind of up. And it was kind of this masculine, angelic sort of energy that I kind of just received these downloads on during that session. And then as well as just this lifting of the high heart, or the whole chest, the whole heart. It was very much this big expansive heart type energy. I didn't necessarily feel it in my lower chakras as much. I felt it more up in my heart, and then in my upper chakras. I would say it activated days later, but that was much more of a heart like experience for me during.
Well, you probably didn't need any lower chakra, boosts because you've been doing so much work on it.
Yeah. And it's so incredible how I feel like I've reached a threshold of purity in my lower chakras that now everything can activate, and it's happening very fast. But before, I feel like the tether that was pulling me down from having a lot of these like pineal gland, higher chakra activations might have been some of the sexual distortion. So we talked about that on the last show, if anyone's interested. But yeah, cleaning that up, now it's like everything I can go. Like I don't need to really have, and I've done a ton of work on other levels too, but
yeah.
So
Phillip?
it feels like a reward, to be honest, for
There you
years
go.
worth of work. Yeah.
There you go. Phillip. So you said it wasn't so pronounced during the session, but then afterwards, I mean, I know you've done some Harioscamos work. Like what happened? What's happened since then? I think you might have covered it a little bit, but just to kind of reiterate.
Yeah, like I would say, like Jamie's probably my light body that's being full on activated, like that higher energy I spoke about. Jamie's description about sparks, that's in the cells just going ping. That was pretty much, that's a better way to describe than my description. Yeah, I more of a tactile experience. I mean, energetically, definitely had that full-on spark orgasm energy going on, which was going on all the time, but it has been a lot recently, but not to that level. But also a lot of heart activation and higher heart activation. And yeah, one of the things I do is I connect with women to do this work. And during the session, I think I connected with someone else and had higher heart activation with her. So that's pretty significant. Yeah.
Cool. Well, I think it's significant that, and I already mentioned it, but I think it's significant that 4 men out of 5 or 6 in a group of 50 end up being the 4, which was meant to be 3, but ends up being 4, is significant. The number 4 is significant, I think. So let me just kind of go back to that for a second. The number 4 is significant, I believe. This is just my take on things. I'm not saying it's absolutely accurate, but having been in a connection where there's been a lot of herioscamos, soul merging going on for a number of years, one of the things that I realized through these mergings was that when you're in a connection, there's 4 parties involved. There's the higher selves of each, and there's the human selves of each. And I've had communications from both higher selves, obviously from the human partner, and obviously my own reflections, and those kind of all come into consciousness. I believe that that's something significant. There's something significant about that. I also experienced this on the shows when I'm doing shows with certain people, and I'm basically having 2 conversations. I'm having one with their higher self and or an aspect, a multidimensional aspect or aspects, while I'm having a conversation with the person. So there's something to be said for that. But I think probably more prominent for me is the fact that 4 men ended up being the ones that were merging and being observed. That as the individuals go, so goes the collective. So to me, it felt like there's been some people that have been posting, very credible people, throughout this month, talking about what this gateway of the 22 has brought. One of the primary narratives that I've seen is that the masculine and the feminine have come to a party of peace, and the old Mars Venus, old stereotypes, old paradigms, old behaviors are gone. And at least at a minimum that the new pathways are available. So that, I find that very significant because I've been obviously traveled around a little bit and of course collaborated a lot. And I've come across more than a few ceremonies where and this would be going back, 2, 3, 4 years, where there would be a gathering, there'd be just a small number of men. And at this time, the energy was different. The journey was at a different place, and the women would form a circle and the men would be on the outside to hold space. And I just thought that was kind of interesting that we ended up being on the interior and we're being observed from basically etherically a circle of sisters around us. So I thought that was really interesting. I think that's also a really good sign for all of us collectively. I think it speaks to the movement and the equilibrium that's been achieved and or at a minimum that's available to all of us, be a man or a woman. So that was something that kind of stood out for me. Some of the stuff that you're describing, I have experienced both, going back a ways and just even recently. I do agree too that there was certainly something going on before we even got there. And I was on track with it. And then I think it was about a half hour before we were actually scheduled to start that Facebook for some reason that I still don't understand, added a number to the Zoom link. So then I went into a little bit, which I'm usually pretty calm and cool, but I went into the human, nobody had the right link, who's going to show up. I had to try to work it out. I had to get the word out. So I kind of lost the beat on that. But then once we started, everything came in, to full focus. So, the aftermath for me was that, I've been also over the last, I'm going to say probably maybe 30 days. I haven't really written consistently. And I really haven't written consistently what I call soul speaks, which is kind of, a phrasing, a rhyming, a rap, spiritual conscious rap, whatever you want to call it. And so I could feel it coming on as a symbol of, the creativity that was being loosened up because the chakra channels are being cleaned out or have been cleaned out. And there's no impediments or fewer impediments. So I could start to feel the creativity coming. So whenever we had the merge, I felt, like I said, Phillip in my sacral immediately. I felt Robert in my throat and Jamie in the hearts. And then, so I've spent, how long has it been? What's today? So today's the 25th. So it's probably been like 6 days. I've really been, spending a lot of time alone, like a lot of us. And I've spent a lot of time to Robert's, kind of connect to Robert. Obviously, I've just been spitting out verse like I never have before in a way that I never have before. I've also spent a lot of time because I understand just from my own perspective, and I think this has to do with not just men, but women, that the throat chakra is a very, very important, in fact, maybe even on point in terms of the chakras, in terms of this transformation. This is information I've, picked up on just in my own experience over time, but it's coming on full force now. And it has to do with the fact that in my opinion, has to do with the fact that the throat chakra actually represents both the physical and the non-physical, because you have the physicality of it, obviously, and then you have the non-physicality of waves, of tones, of resonance, vibration, and so on, frequency. So I spent a significant amount of the last few days kind of just merging with the voice, with the throat chakra, okay? And really studying it, being the observer and being the experiencer. At the same time, I spent about, I'm going to say probably about 4 hours last night straight, just playing, just playing a playlist over and over, writing verse, recording it, listening to it, studying it, and I actually could understand in a conscious way what that throat chakra is versus other tonalities that come out of the human, through whatever reason, be it culturally, like a Southern twang or whatever the case is. But this was a vibratory type of energy that had a physicality that was coming from the chakra, more so the chakra than the actual physicality of the throat. So that was really interesting. I'm excited about that. Again, I don't see that just as a Todd thing. I see that as a symbol or a sign of how it's going in the collective. And I think the other thing that I would then pass on back to you, we'll start with Jamie, then Robert, Phillip, is that the fact that we went into a merge and we ended up going into the new grid. And that was pretty interesting in my mind, because we obviously, Morgan and I have had several journeys into the grid. Some of those we put up at the end of last year. And then we had actually connected 2 nights before this started. And so we normally put our hands together when we're together, and we hadn't done this. We hadn't actually consciously done this. We've merged and we've talked and we've come together and so on over these last 9 months since she's been in Australia. But the other night I just said, hey, I'm going to stay up late and I'll go to bed with you. And then she said, why don't we do, like a session, like as if we're together. And I said, that's what I had planned. So it was obviously something going on in the telepathic field. So we ended up having this whole really incredible. She channeled, you know, and I ended up recording it, and then I ended up writing the text out. And when I was writing the text out, everything came back, both in the conscious experience, but also in the multidimensional experience. So I was actually getting feedback from both higher selves and from, you know, going through the words. Now, the thing that was so interesting is at the very end, after she stopped and I just blurted out, I think we just did the session. In other words, something got anchored that was almost like an initiation or something we were to do to kind of seed the session itself. And a lot of the attributes of that session for me with Morgan are along the same lines of what you're talking about, the three of you that you're talking about. But anyway, going back to what we're talking about, there was both. We did a session with Monique and who was it? Gail Barnett. And this would have been like even a couple of days before that, so maybe 3 or 4 days before this happened. And we went into the New Earth Grid, and this was a private session, and it was a totally different experience than any of the experiences that Morgan and I had had in the New Grid, because it went into the inner Earth in a dissension in terms of like going into a shaft and going down. We ended up merging with golden light beings that were aspects of us. Each one of us had the same experience. We just experienced it a little bit differently, but that's pretty much what happened. So now going back to what we did, we end up merging, which wasn't planned. We end up going into specifically going into the New Grid, which wasn't planned. And I think that was very significant as well. So I'm going to throw it back to Jamie, and you can add anything you want. And if you want to expand a little bit on your experience in the New Earth Grid during that merging.
Yeah, for me, it was just, wow. You said before, like, and I read it in the comments, that we're all just constantly transmitting. I can feel it, like, in myself, and I can feel it from you guys. And yeah, the throat chakra keeps coming out. It's, yeah, like, for me, it was, New Earth was different this time. It was just an energetic space. I literally can't describe it. There's no words that can describe it besides it being an energetic space. Since then, I always knew that I was in certain areas at certain times for a reason. And now I went somewhere the other day. Actually, I was doing sessions, and between sessions, I went the wrong way. I made a wrong turn and ended up at the beach. And my higher self's like, pull over. So I'm like, yep, all right, sweet. I'm going to have a break. I'm going to do some just chilling out. I think I've cut out.
No, you're good.
Oh, right.
Yeah, you're good. No, I muted Phillip because he's got some background noise, but I'll turn it back on.
I wondered what that was.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I ended up at the beach, and I'm like, oh, clearly I'm here for some grid work. And suddenly I'm consciously aware of what I'm doing with grid work now. And it's like, I never knew what I was doing before. I knew that I had to go places, but now I was seeing what was going on, and I was like, oh, this is amazing. And like, I hadn't really done a lot of sessions recently, but then in a matter of 2 days, I did like 12 sessions or something ridiculous. And each session, like, because my sessions are never the same, they're always tailored to the individual. And like, I was still doing what I was previously doing, but now, like, they are just transforming in front of me. And part of it, as well as my own journey that I've been shown as well, has been all about integrating into this avatar body. Everything is about going within. Go back a little bit further as well. The last time I jumped on your open mic, I came on talking about an experience where I was traveling through my veins and things, and they were like portals taking me to different places. That is now sort of all intertwined and linked. And now most of my sessions are primarily based about helping people bring their soul into this avatar body, because we are so detached. And one of the first sessions in those 2 days, I was actually seeing, because I started at her head, and it was like I was holding her spirit soul in her head, and her body was just like flapping in and out of her body, like. And it was, yeah, by the end of the session, she was actually embodying her avatar body, which was just incredible to watch. And it's just, yeah, like, I can't get out how much has changed. And then I feel like this is a significant thing to talk about too. I just, as it all happens, I put up a post a couple of weeks ago that I need to start working with horses, and I made a couple of new connections, and I got drawn to this particular property. And as soon as I get there, I'm just like, wow, these two people, first time I'm meeting them was just awesome. Like, love the energy exchange. And then I go out, meet the horses, and I'm like, oh, where's the fourth horse? There's meant to be, I thought there was 4 horses. And they're like, no, there's only 3 horses here. And then I just get guided, sit down, just drop in and start connecting. And I ended up merging with one of these horses, and the whole time I could feel her body where she was, and I put my hands up like this, and I could actually feel the energy. It was like sonar bouncing the energy between each other, like back and forwards. I knew exactly where she was. And then at the same time I could feel another horse to my left, and I just thought, oh, there's another one just sitting there. And there was 2 lambs there that had to sort of help her, like, come and show that I was safe, interacting with me. And then, I felt her energy, and it was like, once the sheep showed her that it was all right, then she actually physically came in, and then I touched her. Like, I didn't need to open my eyes. I could see her body with my third eye, and, touched her, and she touched me, and then she stepped back, and then she properly merged. And I could see that she had that in and out soul thing too. And she showed me her heart. It was like someone cut my heart in half. And it turns out she'd lost a foal, and the other one was the foal that she'd lost. And like, it was just an incredible experience. And then I ended up doing 3 sessions for the people that were there. And I'd wanted to do sessions outdoors and around nature, and I ended up doing the sessions out with the horses, and then the horses interacted and the sheep with the sessions, and like, everything is just like, everything's flowing, everything's amazing. Like, I'm sure that you can pick up the energy. Like, it's just, everything's amazing.
Wow.
And something you said about us being in the center with the women, like during that session, it was like, it wasn't only that, but women were jumping into the session while we were doing it too. And there was no division. Like, a lot of people would have looked at that and gone, oh, in olden times, thinking, oh, it's segregation and that. But it was, even though we were the main ones that were actually talking about it, like, the women were still a part of it. Some only wanted to observe, and some were actually connecting. And like, it's just the distorted masculine and distorted feminine is just crumbling.
Agree. Thank you, Robert.
Pleasure.
Yeah. Someone in the Soulogy community was telling me that about, she was in the group, and she was saying that she received a lot of codes. And it's so fascinating to think about all of these women who all have these psychic abilities, and many of them might have dimensional sight and all sorts of kinds of things, just watching this energy unfold. That blows my mind to think about. But the experience for me, days after, was really, so I experienced, gosh, what should I go into? Well, I experienced a bit of flatness. Definitely, I think around so the first day there was a bit of flatness, and then the activations really started to pour in. I was kind of wondering, like, what's happening? But then it really started to open up. And then, I've since done a couple other mergings. So I merged with Sananda, like I said. I also merged with the Mother Goddess energy, which I realized was Isis, and received quite a few downloads from that, which is brilliant. And so I feel like those are still kind of unfolding in my field, as well as on 2-2, the day of the twos, the 6 twos. I experienced myself present at some of the activations. This is the first time myself experiencing this, but while people were doing healings, or these activations at some of these like pyramids in different places,
Right.
I was there holding space with them, you know, and I was watching it energetically. And it wasn't necessarily like I had to be in meditation to go there. It was just I was sitting on my couch doing my thing, and then I went there. And then later on in the day, there was a party at night, and I actually, this is the first time I've had like a, you know, full kind of like completely soul leaving the body sort of experience. And I was there at the party, you know, on the edge of the party, watching out of body experience. But I was also present in my body. It was interesting. But
where were you? Where was your body at the time?
Just on the couch in my
Okay,
family
okay.
room.
I got you. Yeah.
Sitting down, yeah. And yeah, I really experienced the joy and the excitement and the energy. And then after that, I went to Ryan Melchizedek and Rhea, I think it's Reza or Rhea Melchizedek,
Right.
their activation that night, which was one of the most profound things I've ever experienced. First time I've been to something like that, but that was a 4-hour long session of them very specifically activating all different kinds of things. And, you know, with me, with my higher self, it's a bit more of like just kind of this intuitive, like just go type of energy. Like I kind of just say, let's do it. And my higher self takes over and we do it. And that's been a bit more my spiritual experience. With them, it was like they very much understood the specific things that they were doing and they really went through them. And so I experienced quite a bit of activations in my field from that, because they really just addressed so many things, and something came up in me. I even had a triggering experience during the event, which was interesting, where I was kind of like, yeah, I kind of like something in my brain started cussing someone out. And then, yeah. And I was like sitting there, I was like, this person is not this. Like, I know that. You know what I mean? Like, I know that. I immediately am like, how can I take responsibility for this? And it was kind of like, we don't need to deal with this right now. But just, and I kind of like tripped out about it. But then it was like, my teams came in who are very present with me now. Like, I really know much more about them. They were like, she's good. She knows how to handle this. She's already dealt with her energy field. Like, you don't have to trip out about this messing with her, messing with the energy. Just get back into your heart and you're cool. And so I kind of focused on that through the event. And that was such like a massive reflection though, of how when we get in these high energy containers, like that was one of the highest energy containers I've ever been in, that we can get like, it might've been something this person said particular or whatever, but it just like activated, you know, something in me that was just like, raw. And it's like, and this has been such a theme, you know, is really just to not immediately, you know, shift it and be like, oh, okay, what do I need to take responsibility for myself? And of course, this is the work that we do. But that was such like a big reflection of that, and a big reflection of how I might have run into some spiritual people over the years and not been able to really understand what they're doing. And I felt something in my energy field be triggered, and I kind of like wrote them off as like, oh, like that's not that's not whatever or whatever. But it's like, no, in reality, it's like that's just a part of me that's switched off, that, you know, is switching on. And so yeah, that was a fascinating lesson there. And the next day after that, I was blissed out, heart exploding, just like, oh my God, life is incredible in the morning, and then rocked in the evening, just like, you know. And I was kind of triggered. I was kind of like, geez, like, this is why you don't do so much in like a week, Rob. Like, you've overdone it. Like, you know, just kind of, and I was even kind of triggered at them. I was like, geez, like, why did I, you know, do this with them? But I was able to, it was, you know, the guidance to just get back into your heart. And then really the next day, just integrations of all of that. And I feel so much more coming online in my field, so much more just happening for me very quickly. And yeah, it really does feel like an initiation period. Very much like, you know, maybe I was a bit more of like kind of on the edges of these groups. And now it's like, oh, like now I can be here. Like now I feel much more present. So that's exciting for me. And I'm yeah, I'm excited.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I think one of the things listen to your account of what's happened to you is I think we're all going to get the message, and I'll just step out on a limb here, but triggers are activations. You're activated. The only question is the human going to align with the information that's available from the trigger? And it's not even in my mind, not even a question of whether it's going to or that aspect's going to, because it is in time. There's no doubt about it. So I think that's interesting. The other thing I find interesting about what you're saying is we all have this, and that is we see someone or some group or something that steps out of line with our inclinations of what spirituality is or whatever, and then we write them off. Now you can also use that template, or pattern or whatever you want to call it in human interaction and so on and so on. But oneness is oneness. So I have seen a lot of that in the field in the last few days, where there's a wider acceptance. I see people coming into my field that we have not been in equilibrium. It's really been fascinating. I haven't really spoke to a lot of people, but I have noticed that, and I think that's also a very good sign as well. Phillip, I'm unmuting you. You're back on.
Yeah, I've got a guy next door using a pressure hose. So
it's okay. It's okay. You're fine. You're fine. I just turned
see
it off.
how we go.
Yeah, you're good. We can hear you fine. Don't worry about it.
Oh, cool. Yeah, just on the session itself, I've spoken to a couple of the women that were there, and Christine McDowell said to me that she saw us four on like the corner of, say, a table. We were on each corner, and the women in the group that wanted to join in were joining in the space in between us. So it was becoming like a square circle of people like that.
Yeah.
So it's very much maybe we were the center of attention. I think the women that were in that session as well had an impact. So, yeah.
Absolutely, they did. There's no question about it. So you're saying there was like a circle containing the square that we created that was...
No, just a square. It was just a square with people.
Right, but that the women were filling in the space in between. Yeah.
To make a full square. One of the things I want to touch on is, and I'm curious to what you guys think about, is Harris Gamma seems to be, it doesn't necessarily have to be a romantic relationship as such, yet you get the full activation of the heart, and the romantic connotations. I don't know, I'm increasingly seeing it as like a 3D trap, one of a better way to put it. You guys' thoughts on that?
Are you passing the baton, the talking stick?
I'm passing it to anyone who can give me some thoughts on it.
We'll just keep going in a circle. So I'll go next, go back to Jamie, Robert, Phillip. So that's interesting that you're bringing that up. I got online, for all intents and purposes, when I came off the street, I got a computer. And so from probably summer of 2013, I met Morgan September 2015. So for a couple of years, I was like a lot of people, interacting and engaging energies, and we didn't have the consciousness that we had then. And I didn't know anything about merging. I did know something innately, and I did a lot of connecting, and most of that was with women. And there was something going on that I knew, but there was also the parallel of stepping into the distortion of the sexuality, cyber sex and so on. But a lot, I have to say that I understood, and I think this is something that must have been in the field, that you've got to try to maintain as much integrity as possible. But there was something being done, something was happening. People were opening up. So I would kind of compare this, first of all, to like what Robert said about going to Ryan and Ria's session or anything else. Okay. Even the session that we did, what's in my, from my perspective, what happens is you get presented with something, and at a conscious level, and sometimes at an unconscious level, it's put before you and it opens up code. And I think that's what's happening. So I look at it more of an energetic thing. And I'm going to bring this back to the merging and the Helioscamos. But I look at it more of an energetic thing rather than the process or procedure or pointing out certain things that are being activated. It's not, it's invoking the memory of the innate soul in a person and going, oh, whether they're conscious of it or not. So it's opening up. And I think that's what this merging does. So when I met Morgan, she's, we actually did this on the first night. She said, because it was whatever you want to call it, it was destined or whatever the case was. And I immediately said to her, I need to talk to you. And she said, I know. And so then fast forward, I'm going to try something. Let me extend my hands through the ethers and put your heart, or hold your heart in my hands. So that started the process. And then I returned it later. And then we went through all the chakras and so on and did it on a very consistent basis. Once I went through that process with her, and obviously there was a romantic aspect to it, but it was still different than a normal type of romantic program. It was, I knew that, we both did. So once I started reflecting on where I'd been and what I'd been shown, I started to understand that we're always merging. You're either conscious or you're not. And, I think the thing about the merging on a conscious level that is so important and so powerful is that it is conscious. And that when you open up like that, in that vulnerability and in that energy of transparency, you can't have an agenda. And if you do, shit's going to go down. You're going to feel uncomfortable. And I'm sure, Phillip, you could relate to this with what you've been doing. And I think all of us can to some degree or another. Robert, you were very candid and when you came on to the show. And so, we know that that's out there. I think one of the major parts for me that needs to be considered and that's not talked about enough, whether it be soul merging, Helioscamos, or many other, processes that are, that are supposed to be on the trajectory of ascension, is we don't talk about the human being enough. Okay. And so I think that when you go into something like this, those things need to be recognized and acknowledged, and not put out here like our shadows and put into the the room with the door closed and where we don't own it, where we don't bring it to the party. I think it's very important because in my experience with what I've been exposed to, working with Morgan, who's that's a highly trained practitioner. And when I say highly trained, I'm not talking about intellect. I'm talking about intelligence, downloaded intelligence. But one of the things that I understood was it's, the soulgasms are great. The chakragasms are great. The things that happen are great. But the healing is where it's at. And that's the true measure. It's not how many aspects come into your bedroom translucently and do a ritual with you and your partner. It's not about, the ceiling disappearing. It is, but what's more important is the healing. And for me, that's the real measurement of what it is, whether it be sexual distortion, whether it be other agenda-based or unconscious programming that we might have. So that was kind of to what you were talking about. What I did want to bring back up when I came back around for me was that for me, when we went into so we merged, and then I think she suggested, do you guys want to go into the new grid? Next thing you know, we're there. Okay. Now that to me was very important because I had already had a couple of experiences over the previous 2 or 3 days. And again, as the individual goes, so goes the collective. So just as Ryan and Riza's thing was going on, Mateus de Stefano, you mentioned about the pyramids, many other people, Sandra Walter. I mean, there was a lot of these going on around the world. I think the importance of or the significance that we ended up going there. Morgan must have innately just known this is where we go with this. And by the way, we've gotten a lot of feedback on just having that experience, and we're going to do like a group visit to the new grid, just like we did in this case, but instead of the Heroes Commons, it's going to be going to the new grid. We'll do this in March sometime. But anyway, what I'm trying to say is that I think it's really important that we ended up there, having been to the new grid and seeing kind of the surface of it, but to go in and actually see the foundational aspect of it, and then to reconnect with those aspects that were, as I understand it through my own transmissions or my own experience, those were the bridge. Those were both aspects that have a hold on our soul lineage as well as our human lineage. And so there's something about being there that also you could also look at in terms of what it represents metaphorically, because we're going inside, okay, which is the macro. And, you know, of course, that's what we're doing internally. So I think that was important. I also think that it's important to kind of like acknowledge when there is alignment with the experience. And I think we can just all sit here and we can know that. Monique, Gail, Morgan, and I, when we did it, there was similar things that happened. I think it's important because it kind of solidifies the code and builds our confidence. So when we went in there, the first thing I saw was the four of us each at a corner around this table. Now, the table wasn't square or rectangular. It was more of an oval shape. But there was this golden lightning bolt in the middle of it. And I know a couple other people picked up on that. I've seen this golden lightning bolt since we left. I've seen it at least 5 or 6 times. And I don't know what it means. I've tried to collect, kind of align with it, and I still haven't gotten the information. But one of the things that happened to me, and somebody mentioned this, and again, this is just to kind of show the alignment, the validation, to build our confidence as well, is that since that happened, one of the things that's happened is, the clarity in the telepathic field. So there's been some things happen, almost like sequential. One of those things is no less than 4 people. Now, this isn't uncommon that, hey, Todd, you were in my dream last night. Well, it wasn't about being in the dream, because I've heard it before. It was about the frequency, and I'm talking about frequency of vibration, but also the prevalency in a short period of linear time where, wow, this happened. But what happened in each one of them was that the role that I had was the same for everyone, which was basically working with energy and activating things. Their role in my experience, and I had some that matched, okay, some that I said I was there, I remember that, was that they were all kind of doing the same thing as well. They were kind of like holding down the grid in a specific area, and I guess I was kind of instructing them how to actualize it or ignite it, and then I guess I would go on somewhere else. So I thought that was pretty significant. On a human level, some other things happen as well, and I haven't talked to a lot of people. I really haven't even messaged many people at all. But I did a show with Scott Ware, and this is just an example. I did a show with Scott Ware, and him and his partner Maria. They and I didn't know this. They live in, I don't know how to pronounce this place, but it's out near Bakersfield, California. He bought 5 acres. I didn't know this. I knew that he had a house on wheels, and that they left the suburbs, and they just started traveling around. So I said, where you at? And he's like, oh, I'm over here. And I'm like, oh, wow. Well, long story short, I start seeing visually my friend Yvette Goulet, who I didn't know exactly where she lived, but it just came out of my mouth. I think my friend lives there. Anyway, long story short, they're meeting in like the next 30 minutes or an hour. So what was happening was I could see the connectivity, like puzzle pieces. And it was like I was speaking, but I didn't even know what I was saying or why I was saying it. But then as I was looking at the movie that was playing, I understood that this was soul family connecting. And I just, almost like a prophecy. Okay. So I had 3 or 4 instances like that, where like somebody was talking about, where you're talking to someone, you know what they're going to say, right? It was like that, but there was no one. It was the field itself speaking to me. And then on at least 2 occasions, I spit something out and go, wait a minute. And then go find out that that my friend lives in the same place, like 10 minutes from them, which is in a remote part, for California anyway. That's not like, LA County area with 20 million people. This is more of an isolated area. Bakersfield's not that big of a town, but this is still, an hour out of Bakersfield. So this is basically in the middle of nowhere in the mountains. So there's been a lot of things like that have happened that have been synchronistic and that have kind of matched both at a human level and at a soul level. But for me, if I look at it, I still look at everything and go, okay, this whole experience that brought us together, what we're doing here today, what we're a part of, what the Mateus De Stefano group's doing, what the Sandra Walter group's doing, what Ryan and the Melchizedeks are doing, and all these other things. These are all, to me, like seriously anchoring moments that are happening simultaneously, not to mention all the people that are participating etherically. But that lightning bolt, the one thing I did get from the lightning bolt was that was the symbol that it was almost like thunder coming down and anchoring. Now, this is crazy, and this is where I'll stop and pass it on to Jamie. I wake up this morning and I just, I had in my nights physically, I've had I wake up 2 times since we've done this, and it takes me an hour to get out of bed, but no complaints. Everything's good, mostly mentally, physically, but that's that part of it. I drank a lot of water and such, and I still woke up and I'm like totally just destroyed. Right. Not like I can't even, 2 hours before we do the show, I'm like, how the fuck I'm going to do this? I can't even tie my shoes. But what happened was I got up, got some coffee, I sat down, turned on some music, and then I went to Facebook, and I clicked on news, which I don't do a lot on Facebook. And the first thing that comes up is locally the news. And it says, and I never heard this term before, it says some kind of weird anomaly happened in Arkansas, because we've had some really crazy weather over here: snow, ice, sleet, hot, cold. They called it a thunder snow, or snow thunder, or something like that. And I started reading about it, right? And I'm going, what the hell? And they're like, oh, we've never heard of this, we've never seen it, but it was a thunderbolt that was made of. It was like, what the hell? But I knew there was some type of correlation. And then just to conclude that, I know a lot of people, just from picking up on posts when I go share posts in the Soulogy group, and just observing things, there's a lot of really strange weather happening. Like, it'll be cold one day, it'll be hot. It'll be snowing one day, 3 days later, the sun's out and it's 70 degrees. That happened over here. Okay. So, and I've seen this around the world. So there's something going on. And I think these gatherings, this situation that we're in, I think these are really encouraging and exciting, because they are conscious gatherings, they're conscious actions, and they're also collaborative. And we're starting to associate them and see the correlation with what's happening in the etherical field through dimensional experiences, through lucid dreams, and just through memories coming back that we're carrying over when we're in dream state. So that's kind of my 2 cents. Jamie, back to you.
I can totally relate to everything. I wrote down a couple of points that I wanted to touch on that were relative for me. I don't know. I've been paying a lot of attention to the sky at night for a while, and I've noticed how fast the sky is shifting. And then last night, I hadn't seen the moon for probably a good week, and suddenly the moon has moved in the opposite way than the stars have moved, and like, that's all crazy in itself. Then it all ties in with the weather as well. And I had the lightning bolt experience when I was driving to that place that I was doing the horses, and I was listening to Dear Dover's channeled music, and like, usually I would just feel it, but this time it was like I merged with the music, and all of a sudden it was like my scalp got ripped open, a lightning bolt struck in, and like, I don't know, I didn't even know what came in, but it was like even more. I didn't think I could have any more downloads, but it was just like, here you go, it dropped in, and it was just like, wow, that's going to take a while to unpack, and I don't know if it's really unpacked yet, but so that was my lightning bolt experience. But I think it was during the session and during the integration period, it felt like my head was literally going to explode. Like it was just, I mean, I'd had the frequency thing where you feel the pressure, but this was like, is my brain literally about to explode? And it
Yeah,
was funny
ditto.
that sorry.
Ditto.
Yeah. And it's funny that you brought up, because like everything has been like breadcrumbs for me that's finally got me to this point, because just innately, I made a connection months ago, and I knew that she was in a really fragile way and wasn't really feeling good. And so I just energetically put my hands in and held her heart. And like, she was at her house, I was at my house, and she said like what she felt from that, just the love of me holding her hands, like holding my hands with her heart, like cupping her heart. And it's just funny that you had that connection as well. But then forward on from that, when I met my counterpart, that's when I started having the light body experience and everything. But then in my sessions that I was doing, I was noticing like some people, when they were vulnerable enough to say it, they were actually saying to me, I don't know what you were doing, but I felt a lot of sexual energy, like things were tingling. I felt weird. It was like I was turned on and stuff. And then it was, yeah, like I said again, when Morgan said on the weekend, it was like, wow, it all makes sense, because the Harios Gamos energy does feel so sexual, and because we have so much sexual programming, that we just automatically assume it's a, you know, an intimate sexual thing, but it's not. It's just a embodiment of the avatar body, and it's just, that's what the energy feels like, because it's so pleasurable. Actually, and for me, it's all about integrating the higher self into the avatar body. Like, and that's come through in my sessions now. Like, that is one of the main things I'm doing, is helping people get into their, like, get their higher self integrated more. And I've always resonated with the term walk-in. And then one of the connections I made the other day, she, like, there was this instant recognition, and then like we didn't even need to speak that much. There was heaps of telepathy. And like initially after the session, I connected with Robert, because I was like, well, I initially connected with Morgan and then Robert, because I needed that 3D validation initially. But then it's like I added Phillip on Facebook, but I didn't need to send a message. I didn't need to contact you. It was that telepathy was there. It was like I got the confirmation through sharing my experience with Robert, and it was like, right, you're not, you know, it's all 100% legit. You don't need any more confirmation for anything. Just like, it is what it is, and it's just all done. And then this morning, it was, funnily enough, it was only this morning I had the download and saw it, that I actually had the walk-in, or whatever you want to call it, in 2013 when I got rear-ended in a car accident. And I actually saw the soul leave the body, and then whether it was the higher aspect of the soul or another one come in, yeah, like everything is just, I've had moments where puzzle pieces have snapped together, but now it's just one after another. Like everything is making sense to this point. And even last night, I watched the replay of the session we did on the weekend. And because I was in and out so much, I missed so much of it. And just, yeah, so much more download and more came.
What was that like? Yeah. What was that like watching it over? I haven't done that.
I didn't watch much of it. I mainly listened to it.
Okay.
But yeah, the code, and it was funny because every time I would actually pick up my phone, because for some reason I couldn't get, I'm having so much issue with technology at the moment, but I could get it to play on my phone, but not my computer. And every time I looked at it, like it was, something was happening and it was relevant. Like someone was laughing at something or whatever. Like there was always a correlation. It was like I looked every time at the right time. And even today, like today I was meant to have a flat out day today, but then this is the only thing I've got on now. Everything's been canned, and I know that there's going to be something big today. But I don't know what it is, but I don't need to know. And like, I don't need to know the in between. I'm just so in flow now. It's like everything is just dropping in, and like it's going to be something crazy and it's going to be awesome, but I don't even need to know when or what. It's just going to fall in my lap and it'll happen.
Wait till you see how we end the show today. Phillip's going, oh shit. So, Robert, anything you want to add on there?
Yeah. So to add, I guess, to the sexual experience, which is interesting, kind of because I think we all experience the opposite sex coming to us while we're on our healing journey, right? Like these connections, it's like primarily my connections have been with women, whether it be friendships or more intimate ones. And we're doing work together on all different kinds of levels through that. But it's unavoidable, the, kind of sexual stuff that's come up because, we're humans and I've been on a sexual healing journey, right? So I've always just been honest with them and, told them whatever the deal was with that. And it was always pretty much just to transmute energies. It was never like about us going there, right? It was more so just like, okay, this is coming up. This is a reflection. Now we get to deal with this. Now we get to work through it. And I get an immense amount of code from them. They get code from me, which is awesome. But and I think that's been the thing. And then lately it's shifting into this sense of it's really becoming just all about the soul, which is something you can intellectually know. And of course, I've watched Soulogy for 3 years, and I've definitely heard you, Todd, and all kinds of people talk about the soul. And I've been having, more stuff happen with my soul and the embodiment of my soul. When you talk about that, embodying the higher self into the avatar body, I've really just seen that as it's just soul into body, right? Which is the same thing, just different words. But
some people say higher self, some people say soul.
Yeah, I do both. It's interchangeable with me. I use both of those things. And so when when I've been over the years shedding, right, lots of the kind of, I guess, more of the appearance-based things around women, and the more like connecting with them with that, and the connecting with the ulterior type of motive or an ulterior type of idea in my head about what this could be. And I've been really experiencing that shift lately, really since I did all the healing work with a woman recently, but also after this Heroes Gamo session in even more profound way, where it's like, I really, really just want to honor the soul of both of us. And I'm so excited to connect with people's souls. And I'm so excited, for who they are on that internal level. And it's just like the physical is really, it's part of the aspect, but that sexual physical stuff, it's not even the thing that I'm necessarily like interested in playing in anymore. If anything, that stuff kind of comes up and it's just kind of a reflection of the old me. It's just like, oh, okay. But it's like more so, and maybe one day I'll play in it again. I'm sure it'll reactivate. That's how these things work. But right now it's really this reflection of like, I'm very interested in the souls, and I've thought about potentially like merging with a friend in this community who's a woman. And I was like, geez, like this is the most intimate thing I could imagine, right? Like, how do you ask someone to merge, right? Souls, like this is like, it's the deepest, most intimate thing possible. And I was like, there's so much that goes into this, so much trust. But I really got the download from my higher self and just, everything. It was just like, this is the embodiment of love.
Mm-hmm.
This is like pure love, like truly wanting to know another person's soul and truly wanting to share your soul with them and share your codes. And, there's nothing, it's almost like the most innocent thing you could think of, because all of you is going to be shown. It's so vulnerable, and that's just so, it's so brilliant. The idea of that, and I'm interested in exploring that. It's like there's no rush into any of that. That's the thing. The higher self is in charge. That's really what I'm learning to always surrender into. But yeah.
Right on. Very well said. Yes, Phillip, what you got?
Just on that point, a couple of points. When I merge, it's always been with a woman, and whether it be for one session or a lot, I've developed a bit of a prototype, an SOP, and the two key points. First off, I open my heart to love that person unconditionally. And when you're in that space, you're not in the past, you're not stuck in the future about what may be with this woman, or just in that space, and you open that heart to that person. And the other part is I give my control over to the highest version of that person. So you bypass their ego and you're loving them unconditionally. And when you get into that space, especially if the other person is buying into the same idea to a degree, and it's often like this, the levels, sometimes you're pulled up, sometimes the other person pulling you up. But when you're in that space, what we experienced on the weekend, it's so easy to reach that again, or, in that ballpark. And then when you come back, it's like a whole heap of new codes, and instead of being at that level yourself, you're maybe a little bit higher. And you see the other person you're with make that same movement too.
Yeah. After some integration.
Lots of integration.
Yeah, I think there's been a lot of integration going on. And to me, it's been a very different type of integration. Maybe that's just me, but I don't see, as the individual goes, so goes the collective. I don't see, whatever someone's experiencing is obviously in the field available if it's new. But to me, it's felt like an integration where there's a lot of observation. And I tried to apply something different, which was stay busy, stay busy, not just to distract, but to actually, and not, I did some cleaning, and then I went, wait a minute, something's missing here. What do I really want to be doing right now with what I have available? So that's when I turned the music on. I started writing, and that's a different kind of staying busy to me, or a different type of doing. Another thing I think that's significant, I just remembered this when one of you was talking, I think it was Robert, talking about the physical effects of the merging. And again, we've had flashes of this throughout our lives. If you go back to your first love, and the first time you're really interacting with someone that you have those type of feelings for, you can call it butterflies, you can call it, whatever you want to call it, but it's there. So we've had this in flashes. So I had a lucid dream within the last few days, and one of many. And so in this lucid dream, there were many people that I recognized. We were at a gathering. It looked like a festival outdoors. And what was happening at this festival, and I could only speak because I was experiencing it in my eyes. I was observing some people, and I did see the same thing, which was basically they were coming together literally and figuratively, I guess, so it could be a literal and it could be metaphoric. They were coming together. Would go up and see someone, could be a man, could be a woman, and there was an instant feeling of that chi life force. There was the tingling in the lower chakras, and it would go everywhere. But one of the more prominent part of it was the ecstatic type of orgasmic, pre-orgasmic feeling that you might have, and I could feel it in my body. Now I knew what was happening, and but I was watching two women talking, and I actually know these two women. I haven't talked to them in ages, but they've been in this community in the early Soulogy days, and they were talking, and they were saying something about those people over there, not to make light of them, but that those people over there, they were kind of in a group. I just glanced, and they were kind of in a group, like in a different section, don't understand this part yet. Like this happens with everybody, right? I remember when Morgan and I, first met, and she introduced me to this, and we're in our first few weeks, and I remember her telling me, this is how we live, love, and learn in other dimensions or in higher dimensions. So really, that's available to us all. And I think what's happening is that, because I remember telling her, when we were discussing, she said, I'm getting a download. I think we need to do this. And that's a big step for Morgan, and like a lot of these women that have been pulling down the sacred wisdom for a long time, and having the somatic memory and the cellular memory of the witches being burned and all the horrific stuff that happened, they're a little bit hesitant. So it was a really big thing, and I knew it. But I remember once we kicked it off and started going, it just came into me like, wow, this is the time. Not just for this sacred wisdom, but for many other aspects that these people have been downloading for so long. It's time now. People are ready. So I was interested to see how that was going to play out and see what the physical participation would be, because it's not something that we've actually done before. We did it once. I think we did it in November or something like that. We had a first one, but I was really amazed and encouraged and excited about the level of interest, because this was a very specific type of workshop. It wasn't about how do you ascend, and it wasn't about some of these general issues, not making fun of anybody or making light of anybody. It was a very specific thing. And I realized, I guess, frequency wise and telepathically, because I could see it in the field. I could see it in this space. They were very, from a human conscious level, very interested in pursuing something that, in my opinion, they knew innately was the right direction and very important. So I think it's something that's going to become more and more and more on board. And I just feel like that, that this is a sign of the times, and regardless of what's happening, which is really nothing out there, just a bunch of BS. Regardless of what's happening, these things are gaining traction very rapidly. Just look at all these things that happened on the 22nd, some of those that we've named, and think about all the people that aren't out there, let's just say, that have participated in their own right, etherically, consciously, unconsciously, lucid dream, with intention, unknowing, just whatever. This shit's going down. So, get ready, because what we have found to be unique in so many people that have been out there, in these people that have been pulling down the sacred wisdom, in their capabilities, this is the norm. This is not, I can do this and you can't, or I do it this way and it's the only way. Bullshit. It's all energy. It's all coming online. It's available to everybody. And I believe in the session that we did 2 nights before, when Morgan channeled, the very first thing that she said from her higher self was that, and I can almost say this verbatim because it was very powerful. She said something like, you have been laying the roads, the inroads. And again, this is as the individual goes, as a couple goes, so goes the collective. This was a transmission, real-time, collective intelligence. You have been laying the inroads. You have been putting the paths down. These paths are the new neural pathways. And these pathways are created, they're imprinted and embedded, and they're there. So now it's just a matter of taking a different route, getting off the old paths that are drying up. And so it's inevitable, it's evolution. And I think a big part of all of our journeys is getting over the wow of ourselves, of what we take in, of what we can do. And that's probably, in my opinion, that's goes along with getting used to our natural state because it's an impediment to our ability to access it and perpetuate it. But I also say this, that to me, this stuff moves very, very fast. It moves extremely fast. So the math on this side of the veil or this side of the consciousness is not 1 + 1 = 2. It's the 369 compounded in ways we can't even comprehend. So yeah, why don't we go around one more time, and thank you very much for participating. If you guys have any suggestions as to what you want to do from here, that's fine too. I'm not going to I'm not going to lead anything specific, but let's go back to Jamie. Everybody have a concluding comment or whatever, and any suggestions as how you want to take this thing out is I'm open.
I'll start with the telepathy thing. It was really hilarious to see, because I knew that there was going to be so much obvious telepathy signs. And the other day when I was making one of my videos, I was having a discussion with Antoinette and discussing things. And then later that day, I started watching one of your videos, and we were pretty much having the same conversation about very similar topics at exactly the same time. And yeah, like the synchronicity there is just off the chart. I've come to realize, because for me, everything has been about the avatar body, and a lot of my journey was about pain. And I've realized that any pain in the avatar body is stagnant energy blocks, old fragments of past life soul prints on, because when we come in, we bring in old, basically old overlays on the avatar. This is just what this is my thing, like this is my truth, take it if it resonates. But it's like I came in and there was overlays of past life traumas where I'd been killed or whatever else. And I had to energetically go back, learn the lessons from them. And then suddenly that pain and blockage would shift. And this was happening a while ago, but now I'm super aware of where my energy is. And basically we should be feeling the energy in the avatar body at all times, that buzzing, like we should always be feeling it, because that is our life force energy, and it is through the breath, because breath is life. And I've actually got a way that I wouldn't mind sharing if everyone wants me to help run their energy up and then drop in their heart space at the end. If not, something else can happen.
Go ahead.
And I got a download a couple of days ago that we're basically going to design technology that's going to be like solar panels that we will put on seats, in our bed, things like that. And we will generate our energy and then transmit our energy into these pads, which it's like feeding solar into batteries and into the grid and stuff. That, so like literally the sun shining out our ass.
or maybe that's just a metaphoric visual of the fact that we just do it ourselves,
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. Robert, you're gonna spit some bars now? I spit 48 bars last night nonstop. I was shocked.
I'm so excited for you, Todd. I want to jam with you sometime.
Dude, we'll get together tonight if you want to.
Heck yeah.
Tonight or tomorrow. Yeah, these are the things that, I feel like that we take away from this at the end of the day are they're like was described in her channel, is the new neural pathways, which is actually, I like to extrapolate everything downward into the boots on the ground experience. So yeah.
And another thing, gosh, it's so interesting that download you got with that. We're going, how we're going to put our energy into the technology, because my understanding is that 0 point technology is actually like, it can take the positive and negative ions in the atmosphere and essentially just harness them. But it looks almost like a solar panel, but it's harnessing them, and it's like limitless energy. It's just the magnetosphere of the earth. It's full potential, and there are scientists doing this who have been suppressed, who are coming out now, and I think this is part of the 5D revolution with technology that's going to happen. But yeah, so that download, it totally lines up with every energy and everything you can harness this magnetic energy from, that could power a light bulb, that could power a computer, that could power anything. So yeah, that's cool. I don't know if we're just going to glance over that. That's dope. But one thing, yeah, so gosh, I wanted to say, I really feel like it is such a big deal, this expression that anyone can do it. And this is such a thing that, you know, Todd and Morgan have always expressed. And, you know, just this accessibility to all of these things. I think it's so easy to get bogged down in the stuff. And there is a degree of excitement, of course. Like in my third eye getting unlocked, me, you know, having these recent experiences, these have been things I've been waiting for a while. And for them to come so rapidly in succession, of course, I'm ecstatic, I'm excited, right? But the real tangible stuff is always the healing. That is, you know, and that is always the prerequisite to the expansion, is the healing. It's, you know, it's so easy to get into these spiritual communities and everyone gets like, oh, activate your Kundalini, your third eye, let's astral project. And it's like, well, it's really about the healing of your soul, of your body, of your energy field, of all of the aspects of you that are out of alignment, bringing them back into alignment and embodying your soul back into form, into your body, so you can be your fullest, truest self. And then from that, all of this stuff clicks online, all of this stuff is there. And, you know, that's always just such an important thing, I feel like, to constantly articulate to people, you know, because you know, it's fun. I love this magical shit. I really do. You know, like I love it so much. But you know, the most palpable magic I've ever done has been my healing, has been my experiences healing. And that's a constant every single day thing. There's always something to work on. Right now I'm working on the breath and presence, you know, which is so big. Really just embodying that so I don't lose presence, because occasionally I'll stare at the phone or whatever, you know, there's always something to refine. But I'm so pumped that we can play in this. And I'm so pumped that this energy, this Heroes Gamos energy, it really feels like it's being handed back to the earth, back to humanity, which is like, I like slightly almost felt like I was going to cry. You know what I mean? Like, how big of a deal is that? This is being handed back. And of course, we're going to get that with all of these different things over the next few years. But this is such a cool, you know, key piece. And I certainly am ecstatic. And I just want to do it every day. But my higher self is like, chill, Rob. Let's slow down.
No rush.
I already did, you know. But yeah.
Thank you. Robert? I mean, Phillip? You got anything?
Yeah, I think at the moment, I mean, we're all going through there's a big purge going on for everybody. And the Heroes Gamos work is sort of like a bit of a light. You know, it's a fun place to go to while your body's going through hot and cold flushes and migraines. I had migraines the last 2 or 3 days, which I haven't had for a long time. So, yeah, there's a lot going on. And the energy, the Heroes Gamos energy seems to be activated with different people at different times. So, coincidentally, Jason Esser's got a live in about 20 minutes talking about ridges and touches on the energy between people. I think is really relevant. So if anybody's interested, I would be watching that. It's interesting, Todd, you asked me if I got anything to offer. The more human I feel, the more it's more like just to be the light, just to be myself, just to be true, and less about teaching. to be honest.
Yeah.
You know, just like this beingness. And I mean, I have a website called Ascension Explorer, but the irony is the real ascension is the inscension within. You know, it's like less of an external thing these days. And yeah, it might be rambling a little bit, but yeah, it's really interesting that the Harris Gamos and that energy you share with other people gets activated at different times. And we don't always get to call it. So,
Yeah, that's right. I think everybody's kind of experienced that one time or another. What the hell's happening? You know, the biggest takeaway I've had for the last week, which is associated with everything we're talking about, including the session that we had, Harius Gamos workshop. And I have to go back to the channel that Morgan did 2 nights before. Because for me, I like to keep things simple, you know, take all this information in, kind of like bring it down and condense it to something that both Todd, the human aspect consciously, and the higher, the soul can kind of, I don't know how to explain it, but can kind of have a common denominator, common ground. And this is really more for the human aspect so he can function, right? And function with purpose and in a conscious level and make sense, even though I know that I can't know everything, So in this channel, she says, it would be good for you to observe defragging now, because and it specifically said, this is collective. So then she went on to say, it would be very beneficial for you to observe the defragging. And I'm, you know, picturing the defragging that you see on the computer, you know, when you run the defrag and you see everything. Now, she went on very explicitly and she said, now, all of the pieces that are not in alignment, actually what she said was, she doesn't normally curse in these channels, and I've listened to her many, many times. She said, all the shit's coming up. Okay. So the shift has begun. All the shift is coming up, the shit. It goes to the bottom or the end of the line, and all of the rest of them go into order. Okay. And then you go back to the first particle waiting to get into the conglomerated orderly block. Okay. And what happens is conception. It becomes, you know, like Phillip was saying, it's like this, right? And then she said, and even if for one split second that unconditional love frequency is realized, then the conception is born. So then you have 3 from 2, right? You have the masculine, feminine, then you have the golden child. So now you have 3. And then what happens is the one that was 2, the one that was behind the one that we just went through, starts to go through the same process. And when it does it, the first one is in unison with it. So the first one becomes 6. It goes from 3 to 6. And the one that just followed suit with it goes 3. And then she said, and when this occurs, and the 3 occurs in the second one, the 6 will occur simultaneously with the first one. So then you go to the third one. Okay. Now it's going to do the same thing and simultaneously. So it's a 3, the one before it's a 6, and the one before it's a 9. Now that to me was a very understandable way to visualize the spirit science mechanics. The real kicker for me was all you got to do is love, because love is what makes that conception happen in me, with me and her, with anyone else, and with every merge that we have as an opportunity, right? That's the way I see it. So that made it real easy. So now because you were talking about healing a minute ago, what I'm tapping into here, what I think I'm understanding, and I'm not saying I'm absolutely 100% right, but I feel pretty good about it, is there is no healing involved here. Okay. This is a realignment. This is a I'm not saying that there's not healing at the human level. What I'm trying to say is that this process of loving unconditionally, no bullshit, walk the talk, with all regards to all things, Joe Biden, Ukraine, Donald Trump, your wife, your girlfriend, your partner, your brother, your sister, your mother, your father, doesn't matter. That is sourced from what was made in the image of, from the heart, mind, spirit. And that can be done at any time, in all situations. It neutralizes everything. It creates this 369 thing, which I hit my head against for years, trying to understand, well, what's Tesla talking about? Where can I see something that I can actually sink my teeth into and actually apply? So this just, for me, made it really simple. We've complicated this thing, and rightfully so, because there's a lot of different expressions that needed to share that they've downloaded and so on. But it's a profound simplicity to love. And I know it sounds cliche, but it's not, because I've seen through that channel that she provided, I've seen the mechanics, and I've been applying it ever since. And like Robert was talking about, I went to this thing, I get triggered, and immediately I go into, I love you.
Yeah.
I just fucking love you. I don't give a shit what's being presented to me. What I'm not going to do is perpetuate the old patterns, and I'm just going to love. It makes it so simple for my soul and for my heart and for my human. So that's been the big takeaway for me, and I love simplicity, and I just feel like that's. I don't know where it's going to go from here, but man, that sure makes it easy. And now I can kind of feel like I can understand what he was talking about with the 369. And if you look at some of his commentaries and in interviews, and if you look at Albert Einstein, at the end of the day, what's the one thing that they say? It's all about love. Now, these are the leading scientists of the last 100+ years. And so I never saw in writing anywhere where Tesla said, this is the root of the 369. This is the igniter. This is the accelerator. I never saw that. But if you read between the lines to what these two men said, and then just take into account like what Morgan's channel, to me, that's it. And that makes it really simple, because I'm fucking tired of beating my head against, so many different avenues that are basically a belief system or a process that has a bigger expanse than the one that I'm coming from. This is an infinite device that applies in all aspects, and I know it's going to grow in my comprehension and in my, in what I initiate in life. I just feel like this is not just unique to me. Again, as the individual goes, so goes the collective. So I really feel like that this is something that goes along with everything that we've been talking about, everything that we experienced, the reason we came together today, and really, when you get right down to it, the primary event of the 22 gateway. So
yeah.
Thank you for letting me share that. Jamie, did you want to do something before we get out of here? What did you want to do?
Yeah. And I just want to say, like, you just verbalized what Robert and I were talking about when we said we were handed the keys to the kingdom. Like, you verbalized it in the most perfect way. Like, because I could see it, but I couldn't remember how to say it. And I just want to say thank you so much to whoever sent that heart activation. I really felt that. So if everyone wants to just close their eyes and just take a few deep breaths, really expanding the belly and the lungs. Start feeling the energy in your root. It'll start off small and then just build that energy up. And then slowly run it up the spine through the chakras. If you feel any resistance, just breathe through it. and when it's in the crown, bring that energy, bring it all, combine it all from the root all the way up into the crown, so it's all in the crown. Bring it down in through the throat, and then drop it like a ball dropping down a chute into the heart. It will. For me, it feels like I'm swallowing a golf ball. So just relax it and just let it fall down. And just sit in your heart space for a minute. And when you're ready, just hold on to them, like stick a bookmark in your memory from that moment. So you're really embodying your avatar body. Anytime you breathe, you can just drop straight into that spot where you are at the moment by just breathing. And then come back and open your eyes whenever you're ready.
Right on. Thank you very much. Thank all four of you for coming in.
Thank you.
And sharing
Thanks,
space. Yes. And yeah, very nice. Very nice. Got 2 in the northern hemisphere, 2 in the southern hemisphere. You can't make this shit up. That's the truth. You can't. Yeah, the whole thing is,
There are no coincidences.
I get a kick out of these people that are like, oh, that's just a lens glare or a malfunction of the camera picking up this and that. We can excuse all these synchronicities away all we want, but they are taking on a physical part of our experience. They're coming into our physical experience, and I think it's important we acknowledge it. So yeah, I just want to acknowledge that and acknowledge you. Thank you all very much.
Yeah.
Thank you, Morgan, for putting it together, and see you guys on the other side, or this side, or both.
Peace
Peace
Love you
out.
guys.
Cheers, Todd. Thanks, man.
Bye.
It was really good.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. Thank you.